We talk about sometimes in marriage how you are supposed to be two me's coming together to become a we. But what does that actually mean? And how do you effectively do that in your marriage? So no matter where you are in your season of marriage, how far along you are, there is always something to learn about being a team. So stay tuned and we'll talk about it. Hey, I'm Rusty.
And I'm Heather.
And we're the Bryants, and this is the Redeemed Marriage Podcast.
We are here to encourage healthy marriages, strengthen wounded marriages, and begin the process of restoration to broken marriages.
We aren't licensed counselors, but we are a redeemed couple that loves the Lord and wants to help you journey through this messy, challenging, and fun part of life called marriage.
Hey everybody, we're so glad you're here. This is Rusty and Heather with the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. I have to apologize because in the intro I laughed. I'm really sorry. He tried to redo it and I was like, no, don't redo it. But I just got tickled because you said instead of a me, become a we. And we just have that saying all the time, about when I say we need to do something, you always say, is that an I we or
a me we?
I mean a me we, a you we, or a we we.
Or a we we.
And so when you said you need to become a we, I'm sorry. I laughed.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about, not laughing.
But becoming wee wees.
Yes. We are starting off with a bang today.
To be fair, we've been sitting here for about 10 minutes waiting on our washing machine to finish.
We finally gave up.
And we finally gave up. We were like, if they hear the washing machine, they hear the washing machine. Like, if I was sitting on the sofa reading or watching Netflix and that thing went off, I would be like, I just started it. How's it done already? But when you're waiting on it to go off, it's like a watched pot.
Yeah.
Never boils. A watched washing machine.
Yeah, that
never
whole
stops.
The watched pot never boils.
Uh-huh.
That's not really real.
Sure it is. It takes longer if you're watching it.
Yeah, that's baloney.
It does. We've got a great topic tonight. Let's talk. I'm excited about it.
So, just like we said, we're going to talk, we joke around because Heather will say, hey, we need to do this. And I'm thinking to myself, is that a me-we, a you-we, or a we-we? And, it could be anything. We need to take out the trash.
Mm-hmm.
I know what that means.
We
that
need to let the dog out.
That means me.
Mm-hmm.
I need to.
Mm-hmm.
We need to let the dog out. Well, it ain't we. We're not going to both get up and let the dog out. It pretty much means me. I'm trying to think if there's anything that's a
we
you
things. We need to go to the grocery store. Sometimes I
Me-we.
do that. No, that's not true.
I just got back from the
I know,
grocery
because you're
store.
the best husband in the world. But you were coming home from a meeting and it made sense.
I guess. But, yeah, so.
We need to fold the clothes. I did that today.
That's right. So that's a you-we.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I just keep saying we. Here, hey, we need to do this podcast.
Yeah, we do.
That's a we. We need to talk about two me's becoming a we.
Mm-hmm.
And, right before we started, you said something about the unity candle. And I got to think, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people know what the unity candle is, but I bet there's also a lot of our listeners that maybe that's probably a kind of a traditional thing,
Yeah,
right? So
probably.
yeah. We had a unity candle at our wedding, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that, and they may not, do they do that still?
I don't know. I hadn't been to a wedding in a long time. And
Yeah.
the couple that we've been to recently, because all our old folk people are married. And if they are getting remarried, usually you don't do a traditional, big whole thing. But a lot of people now are getting married at venues, and so they don't have it.
With a lot of outdoor.
Yeah. Whereas if you're, I think it was more of in a church setting, because like for our unity candle, my parents went up and lit theirs, and then your parents went up and lit theirs, and then I took mine and you took yours and we went together as one. And then there was this whole debate about whether we blow out the other candles or if you signify that, you're still a part of their family and those families are still units, but we are becoming one. And it was like, do we blow it out or not? Like it was just this whole big thing, but it's just a signifying a representation.
Did we blow it out?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
I don't think we did. I don't think we did either.
And then, you're just becoming one. But I don't think that they do that much anymore unless it's a traditional wedding.
I don't know. There'll be a lot of people. I'm sure people after they listen to this, they'll tell us whether or not they did a unity candle. But it is this symbolism of becoming we. And even if those were like my family and your family, but even if they were like me, like if I lit one and you lit one and then together we lit one together, that's the actual symbolism that we're talking about. It's not, your family, my family, now here we are a family.
Right.
I mean, it's a me and you, and we become we.
And I think, honestly, because I don't want to leave a bad taste in people's mouth about what we did at our wedding, but I think it was my parents giving me. And then it's like, here I am, and then your parents giving you, and here you are, and then we become one. Yeah. So it wasn't really our families coming together. Let's make that clear.
Right. Yeah.
That's a whole nother topic.
Oh, yeah. No, I think people understood that.
Okay, good.
So when we say, we talk a lot about teamwork and how we have to be on the same team, how we need to come together. The two becoming one is scriptural. That's the first, when God talks about marriage in Genesis, that's what he says. That's the whole point of it. He says the two become one.
Right.
And so when we talk about that and when we say that, well, first of all, just like, what does that mean? What does it mean practically? And I also think, this is a topic for a whole nother day probably, but I also believe that when you get married, the covenant relationship, there's something spiritual about that as well.
Sure.
And when you come together and you're making a covenant before God, then the two becoming one, that's a spiritual union.
Right.
And so, I think a lot of people, they also get, kind of bogged down, or not bogged down, but they just immediately go to the physical oneness and, the sexual relationship and, becoming becoming one. And that is certainly a part of it. But it is, I've read some stuff and even read some stuff recently just about how the two becoming one, it is a spiritual union before God, which makes it a lot more serious.
Right.
And I think that's why we wanted to talk about it, because especially in our generation that we're in right now, people just, it's almost like the way dating works. I heard somebody actually say this the other day. They were talking about how dating is basically like little mini marriages, M-I-N-I, and also mini marriage, M-I. Yeah. And it's like, well, if it doesn't work out, which that's part of it, but you break up and you move on to the next one, or and I think sometimes that just puts this idea in people that, well, I'll get married, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll just move on to the next one.
Right.
And so some of what I think we want to talk about is, how do you protect yourself from that? And how do you just from the very beginning, you say, I'm all in. Like, this is not me anymore. It's we.
Right.
And again, some people out there are going to be like, oh, you still got to be yourself and you got to have your personality. Yes, you do. You still are your own person. You're responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your own spiritual growth, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, there's this bigger picture of coming together with your spouse and becoming one flesh, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things.
Right, right. When you said, oh, there's going to be people out here that say, because we preach that all the time, that you have to take care of yourself and you have to be responsible for yourself and you can't change your spouse and all of that. Yeah, you can't fix your spouse. And that's not what we're talking about. And then, we always feel like there has to be something said for the people who are in their second marriages or who did everything they could to try to save their marriage and could not. Like, we're talking about how God designed marriage to be from day one. And we're talking specifically to people who were walking into that season or who were battling for that season to stay married and to stay as one, and ways that we can prevent that separation from happening.
Mm-hmm. So what are some let's just talk through some practical things. Like, what are some things that we do to remain a we, and the whole teamwork, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
What are some things that you were thinking through?
Well, obviously, you said the first thing people talk about or think about is sexual and physical. And I think that that's very important. That's a very important part of to becoming one. I think that that's the closest that that I feel to you is in physical intimacy. And so that's an important part, not just right when you get married and the honeymoon phase and all of that, but something that you're committed to throughout.
Yeah, and I think along with that, just the being committed, obviously, you would think this goes without saying, but just the purity and, one spouse, one partner, even physically, and where a lot of people that reach out to us, where they get hung up is they have a story that's similar to ours. So there has been a betrayal and infidelity, and they come and they say, we just can't move past that. We can't get past that. And that would be one of the things that I would say, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to re-earn that trust and to rebuild that trust. But that's something that's a huge part of the we.
Right.
So for those of you that are out there that are like, I just can't get past this, well, that's one of the things that, whether it's through counseling or, just that's a huge, huge part of being we. And
right.
So, you can't live there forever. You can't live in this space of, well, I just can't ever do that again because of what you've done to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I believe there's probably people out there that are like, okay, well, we'll stay married, but we're not doing that because of what you did to me.
Right, right.
And, that's, I get it. It's very complicated because, and again, we've lived there. We've been through that. So nobody can really look at us and go, I don't know what you're talking about. No, we 100% know this. And you have to get to a point where you can, bring that back as part of your marriage.
Right. And not just through that. There's other reasons why people choose to not be intimate anymore or physical with each other. And, it could be appearances. It can be a loss of desire for that person, but yet they decide to stay married. And that, you have to get past that. You have to pray. And I firmly believe that there are people everywhere that need to be praying that God restores that physical attraction for your spouse. None of us look like we did in high school or college, or I'm
way better.
You are
looking.
way more handsome now.
Totally kidding.
But that's part of growing old together, and it's part of.
That needs to be a beautiful thing.
That's
too.
right. That's right. And so not just betrayal, but I think there's and then you go through seasons. Let's be real. You go through seasons where, physically, where I remember when we were trying to have a baby, there were certain medicines that I took where you couldn't do things. There's other reasons why you can't be intimate besides just that.
Right.
And you have to you have to talk through that and work through that.
Well, there are physical limitations,
Sure.
and we don't want to discount that. I know it's not necessarily a large percentage,
Sure.
of the population, but there are people out there that, I mean, in fact, we've even had some listeners that were older, and it was, I believe, a second marriage, and they reached out to us, and, they just said it's hard because one of them can't be physically intimate, and so.
Right.
That's one of those things that, look, we're not doctors.
Mm-hmm. We're not shaming or
yeah, and so, but those are things that you have to deal with it, and you have to work through it. You just can't ignore it. You just can't ignore it, and that's I think the main point here is that we need to we want to encourage everybody to get to a point where they're able to be honest and open and communicate, and hopefully the best years of that are ahead of you. And so that's definitely one thing about becoming we. Two becoming one. When we were thinking about this, I don't know. I think that there's people out there that would take two. Some people would take one side of this and one would take the other. But we've had two couples that we've dealt with in the last few weeks, and it just brought this to my attention about even just finances. Mm-hmm. For us, it just wasn't. There was never a question. I mean, it was like we were going to get, when we got married, like, even our finances, the two became one. Now,
I think that's because that was modeled for us.
It was, and we were very young too, so it wasn't like we had. I mean, because I know there's people out there that are just. I mean, you may even say it this way. Well, I'm just setting my ways and how I'm, how I handle my finances and things like that. Mm-hmm. And look, there are people out there listening. You do things separately. You have separate bank accounts and that, and you're like, hey, it works. Mm-hmm. And we're not saying that it can't work.
That's right.
But it is, I think that a lot of times it becomes one of those deals, especially, like I said, with this generation. It's like, let's keep things separate just in case things don't work out. Mm-hmm. It becomes I'm not all in. Mm-hmm. I'm not and maybe you don't ever voice that, and obviously you probably don't voice that, but there is some of that. It's like, well, if this doesn't work out, it sure would be easier that we don't have to, split things up. But where you run into problems, I mean, there was an issue. We were talking through this, and there was somebody said, well, we've just had separate bank accounts. Everything's been separate for forever, and I mean, it's worked until now. Well. And that's the way I feel about it. It's like, it works until it doesn't work.
Right.
And again, people that have same checking accounts and put their money all together, I know that they split up just as, in the same way. But it gets so complicated, and when you're in, if you the people that are, these people that try to split up, or they're splitting up, and it's like, and you look at it and you're like, well, y'all never really were one anyway, in everything. I mean, I had, a family that told me about a family member, and they were telling me all these problems that they were going through and stuff, and then they just happened to, like, in a little side note, say, I mean, their finances are not together, and it just, like, for me, red flag. It just was. And, I know people are listening and they're like, that's pretty trivial. But it's just, to me, I think it's just that big part of, hey, we're together in this. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like when you get married, if one of you has student loans, you both have student loans. Yeah. Like, it's not, well, you pay off your debt and then we'll figure it out after that. No, I mean, you take on that responsibility of your spouse because you're together in that. And I'm just going to be honest, that is the healthiest way to do finances. And this is a subject that I know a lot about because I love this subject and you hate that about me. But I do. I mean, I love the financial part of things, and there, again, we've said it before, but I'm a huge Dave Ramsey fan, and I mean, he has said it to every single, and he's just a finance guy. I mean, he is a believer, which is awesome, but there's never, not one single time where he would say, oh yeah, it's okay, keep things separate. Always you're together, bring
Right.
it in together.
Right.
So you just sat and watched
I
me talk
did,
on that one
because-
because you're
no,
like, yeah,
well, I
this
mean,
is you, this is you.
But I love the image and the picture that gives is, it's not, I'll pay for this, you pay for that. I'll do this, you do that. And again, there may be parts of that work for you, but just let's bring it all together and we're doing this as a team that I love.
I just can't, like, that part of it is just, they're always, even if you don't voice it, there has to be comparison.
Sure.
You know, I mean, I make more money than you. Like, even though if you don't say that, there has to be well, I make more money. Oh, well, I'm paying for the house and I pay for the car, you know? So, I mean, we're living here because of me.
Right.
And then, well, who's going to pay for the kids, playing soccer or whatever?
Right.
Oh, well, that comes out of your check. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I know that there's a lot of different reasons and excuses out there, but, we're just saying, we're trying to give you some very practical things to say, come together, as a team and, physically, financially, what's some other things that you've thought about?
We've thrown.
Or is that it? Hey.
No, but well, I think we've said the word team several times, but I think you have to come together on how to handle your children, on discipline things, just everything about the kiddos. You need to be a team. It's not, oh, well, when they do gymnastics, I'll take them because that's kind of my thing. Why did I pull out gymnastics?
We got two boys. Neither one of them have
and
ever.
I didn't even.
Neither one of them have ever done
Where'd
a
that
cartwheel.
come from? Or if it's this sport, you do it, or that, it's just anything that would divide you. You have to be, like you said, red flag. Like, why does that have to be a division? And so discipline. It can't always be the dad that's the heavy. You don't ever want to say, just wait till your dad.
I mean,
that's right.
either that is, sometimes that works.
Sure.
But it's like, oh, well, you're in trouble. I'm going to tell your dad.
Right. Because then dad is always the one.
the bad guy.
Yeah.
Always the mean one.
Yeah. And so just anything like that. I mean, that's what I thought about as far as, and the mom doesn't always need to be the one that's comforting, doesn't always need, oh, well, come here. I know he spanked you. Come here. I mean, the dad has to be able to comfort
and the
as well.
crazy thing about that, when I hear you talking about it, there is, that's especially as you're younger, and you're learning how to parent and all that. And then if you do it right, as you get older, and as the kids get older, they naturally will gravitate to, like our kids do. I mean, they know who to come to, but it's not because, well, this one always treats me like this, and this one only treats me like this. But it's like, okay, well, I mean,
they recognize our giftings, and kind of the role we play,
right? And so and that's a great thing. So
sure.
That changes over seasons. I understand that. The other thing I thought about when you were talking is just the two worlds. I mean, especially those that maybe they get married a little bit later, which a lot of people do nowadays. A lot of people get married, and so you've already got careers. You've already got your hobbies, all that kind of stuff,
and even separate friends.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy for people in that stage of life to just kind of almost keep their world separate.
Right.
Like, where I have no idea what you do at work. I don't even know what you do. It's I laugh about the whole, which they're not married, but the Friends episode where they're trying to tell what
Ross does.
what
Chandler does. Yeah.
And nobody knows what Chandler does. They're all best friends. They have no clue what he does. And I do, but I think that there's there's husbands and wives out there that they know where they work and what their job is, but they have no idea what they do. And, and I understand some people are like, I just don't care to know what he does.
Or when I get home, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
But
but they're just this making their world become a part of your world. And it doesn't mean that you're, hey, I want to come hang out with you at work. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it is, and maybe you're in a situation that can do that, but it's not necessarily that. It's just, I want to be a part of what you're doing. I want to know so that I can encourage you and pray for you. And, it's like, is there a separate set of friends? I mean, I know you're going to have work friends, obviously, even at the school that you teach with, you have friends that you interact with all during the day that I'm not going to necessarily interact with, but it's not then that you're like every day when you go, I'm going to hang out with those people.
Right.
Because that's not our world. Like our world is together.
Right. And so if you have friends, if you did marry later in life, or if it's your second marriage and you're older and you have your friends, it's something you have to be intentional about. Trying to, whether it's a date with a couple friend or something like that, where you just have to be very purposeful in making sure your worlds come together.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, like my mind is just going nuts right now thinking about all the different scenarios. I mean, where you have this, these two people that get married, and one of them is grounded in the community that they live in, and they bring another spouse to where they are, the spouse to where they are, and they don't know people, and it's just, I mean, there's some tension, some real tension there, and those are the kind of things, like for us, I mean, we were high school sweethearts, we got married. It was very natural for us to, the two becoming one, because we grew into that even as a dating relationship. But I just think that there's a lot of people, they meet, they get married quickly, and then it's just like this whole, how do we do this?
Right.
Like, what in the world are we supposed to do to become a together team functioning marriage?
Right. And we saw a couple the other night when we were out to eat, and they were a blended family. I mean, even that,
yes,
holy moly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I came into the marriage with these two kids, you came into the marriage with these two kids. Now how are we going to become one as a family?
And we know them a little bit because you taught one of them or two of them or something, and and we interact some on the sports side of things too. But we sat there again. We don't know enough about them, except that we were very complimentary of them, because the dad, he was actually coaching the step kids team. He was coaching his own child, but he was like, this is my child too. I mean, they have different last names.
Yeah.
And he's oh, this is my child too. I want to coach that team too. I just think that's a
and
beautiful picture.
And we didn't even know. We were like, wait, is that her kid or his kid?
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah, which is great. Yep.
Yeah.
Like because they just work together so well.
I mean, I think that's a great example of, two me's becoming we. And,
well, and actually that's some we's.
Yeah,
becoming
that's
wee-wees.
right. That's a wheeze.
That's
Wheeze. But yeah, there was a death of a spouse, which that adds to it. But man, they jumped in together and have started a family that's, I mean, it really is teamwork. You can tell whenever just by the things that they're doing.
And I think that there's so many, like, we can't even begin to name all of the circumstances and situations that are listening right now.
Right.
I mean, like, I'm even thinking of an acquaintance that had 3 children and lost their spouse to a death, and a man coming in and taking over like the whole family, like took on a bride and 3 children, and that's different than what we're talking about, but yet it's still the same thing of 2, even though he's a single and she is a single with 3 kids, it's still becoming we, and so, we don't want to, it's so hard when we have a topic in our head we want to talk about, knowing that there's hundreds of different scenarios.
Right.
And so you have to get down to, what does this look like? And it's whatever your circumstance is, whatever your situation is, it's becoming one. And that might look different to everybody. But what does that look like for you? In your world that you're in, how can you physically become one again, financially, our worlds, becoming one and being
parenting,
purposeful in that.
Yep. No, that's good. I think it's such an important topic, and I think it's more and more important because marriages are not quite as traditional as they used to be. Obviously, there's a lot more separation, a lot more divorce, a lot more blended families. There's lots of different circumstances, but I do think that even just the generation that's coming into marriage right now, they just think differently, and it's a lot more. Well, the whole culture, let's just be honest, the whole culture is a me culture. Everybody is me, 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 me. And so, to come into a marriage and go, wait a second, me and me become a we. And that's just hard. That's just hard for people. So I think it's something that we all need to take a look at in our own marriages and just take, just peel back the curtains a little bit and just be like, what do we need to do? Right. Where do we need to improve in this area to make sure that we are a team and that we're doing this thing together?
Yeah. I'm sure it's time for us to go, but you can't discuss this without talking about the scripture of three, that a cord of three strands is not easily broken. It's just not the two of y'all against the world. You have to have that third strand, which is Christ. And when you have Christ as the center of your marriage and the two become one and then combined with Christ being in the center, it's not easily broken.
That's right.
And if those get out of line, out of order, if one goes away, then the cord is easily broken.
Yep.
But if you stand strong, sometimes that we is harder to stand with. But standing strong in the I and I are becoming a we, and then in combination with our relationship with the Lord, our marriage will not be broken.
That's a good word to end on. Ecclesiastes 4:12. So look it up if you're not familiar, but it talks about a cord of three strands, and that's you and your spouse and Christ as the third strand. So, all right, thank you guys for listening. We always enjoy our time, and
hey, I think the washer's done.
Yeah, it finished a little while ago.
We need to put them in the dryer.
Is that a you, me,
that's
we,
an
we,
I.
me,
That's
me,
an
we?
I got it.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to go and give us a rating and review, and we will see you next week.